Hello, innovators. I am Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today we're talking with Matt Lucas, the proprietary Sensei of operations at the Open man of action, lifelong martial artist, musician, wellness educator, stunt performer, trainer, and creator of things. I always love it when I run out of breath, so thank you for joining me on the Polymath Polycast.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Hello and welcome to the Polymath Polycast. So for those who don't know, beyond just the intro there, you have a school in Oakland, the Open and an online education site, totalbewellness.com, because you live by the rule that everything is BS if you don't show up and practice.
Yes.
And I love that about you. So for the people listening in, these innovators, could you please say hello to them as well?
Hey, yeah, I'm Matt. Yeah, I do believe that we're in a headline culture right now. And so I've been in too many rooms where we've removed too many barriers to entry and we've put too many certificates around things that make people think that they actually know what they're doing. And in the arts, it's kind of, if you're not showing up and practicing, I'm a filter for fighters and also do stunts, ride motorcycles. And there's all these things. And I don't care how many licenses you have when you're in the ring, you either can or you can't. And with art, you either can't, you're either expressing yourself or you're not, right? And so I have a site called Total BS Wellness that tell everyone, I've watched a million people say I can do this, but when if you can't do it under stress, you don't know it yet, and that's the rule.
Yeah. Well, and a good example was I actually got recertified as a lifeguard at one point, and this was my third year in a row. So I was experienced. I knew what I was doing. There was no reason why I should have been nervous, but I remember sitting there on the side of the pool and it's just a training. It's just a test. And if you fail, you fail. It doesn't matter. But I was so nervous about it that I just hesitated so much. And it's like if it was an actual person dying, I wouldn't have hesitated.
Yeah.
But since it was a test, I was over worried. And as soon as I just snapped out of it and did it, it was exhilarating. I was excited again. I was able to do it. All it was that little pressure getting past that hurdle.
Yeah, there's a lot of my work comes down to just figuring out the type of stress that you need in order to integrate the thing, because so much of our wellness has been around this negative story that we've put around stress. Like it causes, all these health problems, and sure, it can, but your opinion of it's what's going to cause you the health problem, right? And I had a stunt coordinator tell me a long time ago when they were choosing these stunt guys. You're getting these guys on YouTube that can do, triple spins and all this crazy stuff, but it's totally different when you're standing there around your friends in the shoes that you want to wear, and it's a nice day outside and you guys have practiced over and over again, and you know everyone and you love everyone and we're supportive. But then when you just walk into a room full of strangers and now you're wearing some weird outfit and you're on a wet floor wearing shoes that aren't the normal shoes that you wear, and now they say 3, 2, 1, and now you not only have to do that move, but it has to coordinate with all these other people fighting and maybe an actor that you can't hit and a camera you have to avoid. It's totally different. So your triple spin might literally just be like jump up and land on your back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Well, and it's all about just how you react to that stimuli as well, like you're saying. And I remember just walking from the car to the building and how if you're freezing cold, okay, great, but you're only going to be out there for about a minute, minute and a half.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get so caught up in that cold that they complain about it verbally or a lot of times just mentally, and they waste more time in the cold. They're actually experiencing that stress longer because they're complaining.
Yeah, totally. I've seen it a million times. Yeah.
And so one way I like to break the ice, even though we already have the ice broken here, but have you shared something about yourself that no one knows about you?
Ooh, I feel like I'm always putting it out there. The new thing that I'm doing lately that not people know about is I've been roller skating a lot at night, and I've always wanted to do it, and now that I'm a middle-aged man in a warehouse alone.
Yeah, it's perfect time. Yeah. Well, it is a lot of fun though, and to keep that momentum going and allow yourself to stay balanced in that movement.
Yeah, it's been great. I started as a hip rehab for a torn out hip, and I dislocated it on a job, and then I realized it fires all the muscles that I need in order to rehab it. So instead of sitting around doing boring rehab, I can just start roller skating, and then luckily. And shelter in place happened, and apparently it was kind of the perfect thing because it kind of gets me outside at night, and it's been great. Yeah,
that's awesome. And so before we get into the questions here, what was your mindset 5 years ago, and how have you changed since then?
Oof. My mindset 5 years ago was I was just pissed off at everyone.
Why was
Um,
that?
well, so for the past 25 years, I've been doing things that 5 years ago people started being, oh yeah, did you know that, like, longevity and, kind of, I just remember I remember in the 90s getting kicked out of health clubs for having a kettlebell and being told
Mm.
yoga wasn't good for you by personal trainers, and had a company where we imported like medicinal mushrooms like cordyceps and turkey and all these things, and it just compounded over decades of me just being like, no, this stuff is good for you. This stuff is, and then finally, functional movement. I have some circus performers that came to a functional movement course of mine, and we were doing this type of movement, and they tried to share it to their athletes that they trained in the circus, and they're like, why would I ever do this? Why would I ever do this? And so probably 20 years of being told that the pinnacle of health and movement and relaxation, and it finally started slowly becoming justified, just slowly started hitting mainstream. And so I guess 5 years ago, I was just annoyed with people all the time. It's just
Mm-hmm.
kind of, I was just standing there just going, did you know this is good for you? And then they were like, no, actually. And you're like, I know it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of tired, I guess. And,
Yeah.
and now, teaching more people and teaching young people, the way my mindset has, because I no longer need to make a living off of them. So I can just step back and then do exactly what needs to be done with any wisdom, is allow you the opportunity to seek it. And I'm not an evangelist. It's not my problem if you're healthy or if you win the lot. It's not, it basically what it is opening up the gates and being available. If you're seeking something, let's move you along. And if you're not, you don't have to, you could live a very happy life not seeking this. So now I'm
Mm-hmm.
more accepting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too because there was a story, I don't remember, it was in Dao Jing or something like that, of a man going up to a sage in the mountain, and he had trained all over the world and was so well knowledgeable. But he goes to the sage and he starts just talking. And the sage is just being there quiet, listening. And he's like, would you like some tea? And the guy is like, okay, sure. And as the sage is pouring the tea, he's overpouring into the cup.
Mm-hmm.
And so it starts overflowing. And he's like, well, the guy is like, whoa, what are you doing? And he's like, well, you're like this cup. You're talking. How can I teach you anything new if you don't empty yourself out, have that beginner's mind?
Yeah, and that's the thing that
Seems
I
like a lot of
also
people.
realized was there's a time. I mean, even if you look at the academic world, there's a time where people will start collecting information and hoarding. Martial artists hoard power. They hoard systems, and then intellectuals, they start hoarding ideas and theories, when really it just comes down to, like, are you breathing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I guess the more it's funny. I was just talking to someone about this. They're like, what are you going to do with your business? And I'm like, actually, I'm kind of not really doing anything with it, because most of my success has always come from the theory. And one of my teachers taught me a long time ago. He goes, if people aren't seeking this, it shouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm kind of okay with that. Yeah.
Well, and I do think that there are a lot of people who will be seeking it. And the one beautiful thing about the internet is that now we're connected to people who do want to seek it. And that's just awesome.
And when we get to these certain places to where we are seeking, and what it means to seek something, and a big part of my work is trying to get people to respect and be open to the true barriers to entry that we've kind of removed from our lives. Like, technology has added and taken away so many barriers to entry. And so we have to readjust and reacclimate to those barriers, right? But if it doesn't have a barrier to entry, run. Just run. Yeah. Or first throw it in the garbage and then run, right? That's a key. And now I'm just kind of hanging out, enjoy. And also I'm a little bit more, I have my community now. 5 years ago, I was out all over, and I mean, literally around the world. And that's why I did the total BS thing, was so I'm not on a plane everywhere and going in a million places. People can just come to this one point, and I can actually, by being simpler, I can be so much more giving, and it takes a lot less from me to give a lot more. And so I guess I'm more efficient. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as we age, we refine our systems, we refine our knowledge and our
Yeah.
teachings, and our emotions will be able to have time to either quell or change. And it's
Yeah,
nice.
it is. Yeah. I like the internet.
So let's start. Yeah, me too. I'm so glad to be more during this time. Let's start off by asking, what is the big three?
Okay, big three. I have this course called Situational Mindfulness. And during this time, it was when the George Floyd thing happened. I was also working with these police officers, and it was kind of like, hey, and the demilitarization of the police. And so I was in a lot of rooms with these cops, and then they brought in some guys that, federal and just all kinds of people. And I was talking to this one guy. He was a hostage negotiator and an interrogator. And we were doing exercises on role playing on how to build rapport. And one of the things that he was talking about was asking someone just about three things that they could just talk endlessly about, right? Anything, whether it's cars, food, anything. And my big three were music, movement, and food. And I feel with those three things, I can not only relate to anybody, but I can talk endlessly on them, and I can relate them to each other, and I can connect to you with that. No matter who you are, you could be a serial killer, or you could be, a saint. It doesn't matter. We will connect through something. And I think if you have that energy with something, then at first I just wanted to talk to people about music, movement, and food. But then I was like, wait, that's kind of imposing what I want on you. And then so I was like, well, what's your big three? And a lot of people, I found out they don't even know their big three. A lot of people, their big three is just like, I don't know what my parents wanted me to do. Or, my big three is, honestly, I say when people don't know their big three, like when I tell you movement, if you haven't really thought about it, you're going to default to hiking. Or if you're a kid, soccer, right? That's what you do. And when I say movement, if you haven't thought about it, you're just going to like the Beatles. Like that's the only band you know. And a lot of times we don't really define our preferences in life. So that's the big three is.
I think a lot of people need to think more on what they actually enjoy and have that more in the forefront of their minds.
And also be okay with the fact that there are people that keep music on in the background, because now a lot of people are like, I don't know, whatever's on the playlist, or whatever's on my Pandora station. And as a musician, I remember the days when it was just like we could sit there and you're in the record store and you like walk into this record store and you had to actually kind of know alphabetically where you wanted to go. Mm-hmm. And then now it's the algorithm is doing it, but that algorithm is homogenizing us. So we're wondering why, I just watched a new film. I'm not supposed to tell you what it is. But it showed me that all of the writers on this movie have just sat inside an algorithm, and then they wrote. It literally sounded like I felt like I was watching a masterpiece of algorithmic writing, where every word was a keyword, and it was designed to scientifically pinpoint our culture now. And I was just like, that's weird to me as a person that is constantly breaking things down. Yeah.
It's weird, but is that a good or bad thing?
It's boring to me. But we got to realize like a lot of people eat McDonald's.
Yeah.
So it's not my thing. But I want to know you. And as an artist, hopefully we can learn to express our voice, right? Because I think that's a hard part. That's a hard thing to do when you're an artist is, because you should learn the classics and all this stuff, but the hard points of an artist, there's a couple things. Finding your voice, really, really intense, right? And because we're all going to be talking about, like, even in the polymath thing, right? I've never heard that word ever in my life until you, right? But where I'm from, they just call it jack of all trades or just useful, right? That's it, But then when we go into these other places, it's kind of like, we would start. So we have finding our voice, and then the way you would express polymath is different than me. So but it's all under this blanket and it's all your voice, mine. But then you're trying to connect the idea of what's going on in your head to what's really happening on the page or through the mic or on the screen. And that's the other thing. I think they nailed that. Whatever they want to do in their head will happen on the screen. They got the money, they got the resources and the talent. But I think they don't, but it just sounded like they really don't care who they are. It felt like it was a propaganda film. You know what I mean? But it's good.
Yeah,
It was a good
definitely.
movie. Yeah, it's a great movie.
It just seems like there's a level of self-awareness too. Like find who you
Yeah.
are, find what your big three is, find out about what you enjoy too.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. You know, that kind of thing. And I think we're, it's like we have edited our lives into not knowing who we are because the algorithm is telling you who you are, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens is whatever you click on is what you emotionally react to, which is rarely a decision; it's a reaction. Decisions. It's like we need to respond as opposed to react. And so what we're doing is we're clicking on these things and it's feeding us this thing. And then we're realizing that we're all using the same words and we're all using the same irony. And we're always, it's kind of, culture is adapting really fast to a homogeny. So it's like, cool.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, pivoting a little bit here too, you've created what I would argue a massive collection of courses, which is really cool, and building up even more content under your belt as well. What are some of the things you wanted to create still that you haven't got a chance to?
I'm doing right now 4 courses on push-ups for kicking.
Push-ups for kicking. Okay.
A lot of people don't consider because it's if you were to. I was working with an NFL player and we were realizing the faster your hands move, the faster your legs move, right? So there's ways that we can connect. You have to connect the upper body to lower body. And I believe the future of fitness now, like a long time ago, no one ever talked about core. It was isolation. And then now they're talking about core. But the next thing that people are going to start talking about, is going to be relationships, right? People will start talking about relationships, I say, in the next couple of years. And it's going to be the front to the back, the top to the bottom, the left to the right. And knowing all of these relationships, how the wrists connect with the ankles, how the elbows to the knees, stuff like that. I'm not saying anything new. I'm saying concepts that are thousands of years old. But Western wellness is usually about 400 years behind on its highest moment of enlightenment.
Level.
Yeah. And so what I'm showing are these ways that we can engage different ways of adding resistance to our bodies and techniques without having to go into a gym or without having to use bands. And I mean, it's like you should be able to do it anywhere, anytime, any place. And so I'm doing that one. And I'm also doing different levels and variations of teaching people how to actually take one simple concept, my 5 elements of practice, take one simple concept and turn it into your entire idea, like your entire practice, which that's a art form in itself, I think. Super simple.
Yeah, it really is. I'm a trainer as well, and it's one of those things where I've broken it down to 3 variables of exercise. You have the speed, the intensity, and the volume. Yeah. And every workout, you want to try to work on one of those every week, kind of have a theme in mind every month. And then every so often, like every year, you might want to focus on something different for a big picture kind of thing. But every 10 years, I've been thinking that like people really need to dramatically change the stimuli, the stress that you're putting yourself into, some kind of new challenge in order to get your body improved. Yeah,
there's something about when you're practicing, and also one of the other courses that I'm really trying to figure out how to vocalize is how to properly feel, like how to feel, like when you're doing something. I in one of my courses, I have this line in there. It's like you focusing so much on feeling the burn is keeping you from actually feeling what's happening. And it's kind of like effortlessness is only bought through effort. So you do kind of got to punch through that burning kind of lactic acid thing. But after a while of that, it should go away and the effortlessness starts showing up.
Well, it's more like it goes numb.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
I remember one day when I did 300 push-ups in one workout, and this was like the max I've ever done. I got to around 240. My arms were numb. I had fallen on my face 3 times, and I managed to activate like the state of flow, but also like my adrenaline as well. I was able to finish up the last 60 reps that way. But it's one of those things where I didn't care about the burn. I just cared about getting it done. And so it's almost like you transcend that lactic acid and you focus more on the situation.
Well, we have to exercise. I tell everyone you're exercising because you don't farm. And and if you've ever traveled and you've ever wrestled, when you get around people that farm, it's hard. And the manual labor is something that's very beautiful. And when you get, when you're trying to develop that, like my class used to be like 4 hours. And I mean, I still train all day. Like when I'm on this computer for 8 hours, I'm in my dojo. I mean, last time we talked, I was in my martial arts space, and I just swing clubs and kettlebells, and I'll watch edit in planks and horse stances. And I'm never not integrating movement and work with what I'm doing. And I'm very fortunate to be able to have the dojo desk. And whenever we're doing this stuff, though, I remind people, like, the bricklayer is picking up one brick over and over and over again. The brick is not heavy, and he's not going in like, I'm in ketosis, let's do this, and getting swole. He doesn't care about getting swole. So you want to tap into your tendons and your structure and your movement. Like when you're carrying water from here to there, that you're not like, time me. No, that's a privilege. That's a privilege. You know, it's like the idea is like, you might have to make 5 trips. So just start carrying it and let your posture kind of work in the way that it needs to work in order to get the job done. And you're going to get strong. And my favorite example of that was there was this woman from Mongolia, and she was just beautiful. And then this one woman goes, God, her body is so amazing. I wonder what does she do? And I go, she grew up in Mongolia. That's what she did. She just got here from a place that's really hard to live. She's smoking.
Yeah, just super strong, super kind. Yeah, and it's interesting too because I didn't actually start driving until like about a year ago, and so all the time before I was just walking. So when I had to get groceries, I would walk and carry it home. So carrying the milk, carrying the bags, and stuff like that. By the way, what inspired you to create the 5 Elements of Practice course?
Well, nothing. I mean, it's the way I was trained. So your body is always telling a story, and it's honoring when you work on like Taoist stuff and like deeper yoga practices, you learn to feel. And in the winter time, you don't want to start with something heavy. You want to start with something still. So like earth. And you also want to honor who you are and also balance out what you are not. So I'm all fire and I'm just like, and I have no earth. I'm all fire and water technically. And so I would have to, a lot of my training was stillness work. And then I realized I was getting really, really, really strong. So when you hold that deep horse stance people go for 5 minutes, but I mean, my record is 1:35. Like I could just sit in it and just go. And I'll do these courses where you can have the strongest person in the world, but then we always say like stillness, like movement builds your strength, but stillness builds your spirit. That builds your soul. And like, there's nothing like it. And so I needed that. And so I started doing that. And then when I was doing a lot of this work, I was also kind of hurt a lot and, doing stunts and just being young and then out of shape and all this other stuff. So all of those things, I realized if you don't know a lot, how do you, it's when you're playing music, like it's these 12 notes, change the attitude. You got rock and roll. Then you got hip hop. It's just these 12 notes that you're just mixing in all these different attitudes. And that's kind of all it is. And it's the Tao, it's the 5 elements.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of mixing, I had learned about various philosophies growing up and was trying to identify how I approach my self-development. And so around 8 years ago, I created like the 4 pillars philosophy, which I might have mentioned to you last time we talked, but it's just the mind, the body, spirit, and emotions. You're talking about how sometimes you just got to build a spirit. Sometimes that's just a matter of grit and just actually doing what you need to do without worrying about things. Like you just have to do it.
And the other thing is when we are an academic culture that loves to have ceremonies and trinkets and all this stuff, but just dive in. So not only in the 5 elements of practice is it stillness and refinement and relaxation, but there's also a state of mind for each one. Like what is that watery mind? What does it mean? And there's so many examples. I wrote this blog post a long time ago called the Gandhi scenarios. And it was about that, like how he would have handled such a powerful movement such as the Salt March, but if he had different makeups of fire and water in his body and stuff like that. But when we can adjust our mindsets and we can adjust the ways that we move through things, because a lot of people, I'm sure you've met, you teach swimming, so some people can just go, they're sprinters, right? But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people might not have the focus to, I see this a lot, especially in the gaming world. You know, you game, but when we come from this world, right, this constant barrage of stimulus, can you sit there with no stimulus and feel? And then there's a lot of people that love to go hard, right? But can you go soft and understand that going hard is a privilege of a social construct? Like, it's a privilege. If you can be an athlete, that means you know when, where, how, what you're doing it with, the tools you're using, and probably who you're doing it against.
And you have your basic needs taken care of too, because it's self-actualization. It's not actual needs technically.
Yeah. And I mean, we just did this talk on the astrology of this month, and I was talking about that. If you know you can be hard. Hard body equals soft ground, which means I'm in the dojo, I'm on a pad, I'm in the pool. You know, it's like it's soft, and I know the conditions. But if the ground is hard, you need to have a soft body, right? So like when I'm falling outside on the cement, I need to learn how to give, right? But when I'm in the UFC, there's a 2-inch pad in that octagon, and I get slammed on the ground, right? And so there's a different type of they're still exceptional. But it's like, what is that conditioning us for? And can we bring it out into the uncontrollable when you don't know when it starts, stops? And that's where the 5 elements comes in. We refine it, right? And then we get still and we feel it, but then we learn how to relax through it. And then we learn how to be creative with it and explosive with it and all these things. Like, and how do you express that through function, right? Like I always tell people, like, the punch goes out and in. And if I make a fist, you think a punch, and you think there's an intention behind this. But technically, I'm just spiraling out and spiraling back. It's a function of the arm. You control the intention, right? And if we can grasp that, then we don't need to go to punch class and then arm spiral class and then reach out and grab coffee class. And we have to keep wasting our money on all these things. And you can just say, oh, yeah, every person's arm does this. Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, like everyone, you know, unless you lost it, that's all it does. Yeah. And how do you connect that function to your intention? Yeah, that's kind of really what
changing your intention. Well, you said you had basically grown up with the 5 elements and so much. How did you learn that information? What is your history with the elements?
Well, it's just we're always talking about it, and then so I was taught in a very in the roundabout way. Me and one of my Shaolin buddies, we talk about this, like when we were learning Qigong, like you go to these, like the white guys that are teaching Qigong, and they will wax on about every detail of your body, right? And then we crack up, like our teacher, he said, inhale and then exhale. And then you just basically had to follow along, and you just stayed confused for about 5 or 6 years. And then one day you felt it. And that's one way. And then the other way, I mean, I see other people and they know more than I'll ever know, but they can't feel. They know a lot of words though. I'm really proud of their words. Great words. You know what I mean? Their resume is amazing. You know what I mean? All that stuff. But it's kind of like when you go to it's like when you watch kids in Africa videos, and they're just doing crazy stuff on dirt. And then their music is amazing, and you know, it's just mind blowing, and it's inspiring, and they're barefoot. So there's that. So it was always kind of around me, and then I was just kind of started studying more about Qigong and reading more texts, and then I was like, oh yeah, it's elements. This is why we're doing it. And then every now and then you would meet a person that would give you like one little thing. They'd be like fire, you know. And then, or to describe it, it'd be like water, you know, and you're like, oh. And then I started, luckily, going around to all these different schools all over when I was touring and stuff. And then you could just see the different ways that people are expressing it. And then it's every Kung Fu movie. You're like, oh yeah, I've been learning this the whole time. And then, you know, the answer's been inside me all along. And so I'm very grateful now, after years of crying and wondering why I suck, you know, but now I realized like they were prepping me to shed all of that. And so, that's where the 5 elements came from.
Become more. Yeah. Well, and I think that too, it was one of your challenges that built the strength of who you are today.
And I work now with my buddy Kisu, who is one of the creators of Avatar, Last Airbender. And he and I, he and I geek
Love the
out.
show.
Oh yeah. He and I geek out on that all the time because they do the four elements, and then I also know that some, now I've met many of my kung fu heroes, and they're part of my community here, and so therefore we geek out on that. And I don't like people to get too deep into the letter of the law. They need to understand the spirit of what we're trying to say. So if you were to say Avatar, then they just have their 4 tribes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if I say 5 elements, I might be taking air out of the mix for my 5 elements, but it's just an attitude, and whatever word. And I really like this from the Persians when I was learning Persian martial arts. They call it whatever you need it to be called in order for you to get your butt in the door.
Yeah. Like when I'm teaching swim lessons, I'll often change the terminology I use just to get the point across to that person.
Yeah. So if you only know karate, cool. We're learning karate today. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I don't speak Japanese anyway. So I'm just saying words anyway. It doesn't matter. It's all the attitude, right? And teaching technically is really just transmission. It doesn't have much. I mean, I learned from more people that don't speak English than I have from people that do. And it's because they transmitted something. They put their hands on me. They just adjusted something and then just saw right through my soul. And I learned a lot from that. And you go home with question again, you go home standing in that record store, just not knowing where to go. And you have to like dial in and you have to take steps to move, as opposed to them being like, all right, when you go home, do this thing. And this is the prescription to do this. And now I can walk you through my, 3-point plan. And it's like, yeah, but your 3-point plan is keeping you from being creative.
Well, let me argue with that a little bit because I have my 3-point plan, my 3 steps to swimming, so to speak. But I don't limit myself to that. Oftentimes, 80% of the time, it is those 3 steps. But there are plenty of situations where they don't matter. What matters is that person. Maybe that person's having a bad day, and I need to change completely how I'm approaching the situation.
And I 100% agree with you. Like, I personally have this whole idea of like, this is where the concept is if your 3-point plan isn't placed forward with the idea of now mess with it, then it shouldn't exist, right? Because what happens is at the end of it, if you learn these 3 steps and then that tells you that you got this, you're going to forget that, no, you have to bring it into your life. And there was this beautiful, my dad was, he was a special forces guy and they have a way of understanding. And again, everything is systematic. And I love the way the military teaches things. And it is that it's your 3-point plan, but they always say this, you do your 3-point plan and then you put it under stress. And if you can't do it under stress, you don't have it yet. And then you should be able to execute that 3-point plan consistently under stress. And then after that, mess with it. And that's the way to do it. So I agree. But I think what's lacking in our culture right now is we have to control the outcome so much because you paid money. And you know what I mean? It's like, I think the main thing is we've lost what it means to seek out a teacher. And I remember going to this one teacher this one time, and he went around the room and he goes, "What's your intention for being here? What's your intention?" And everyone had clear goals of why they were there. And I went, I don't tell teachers what to teach me. It's like, I sought you out. I want you to look at what I need to learn. Because that's like, like when people say kids are smart, but if you really ask like a kid what it really wants to do, it's like, I just want to eat cheese pizza and like play video games and go, I want to put this fork in that light socket. Don't ask the kid what to do. Like, there is a brilliance to their innocence. But
well, and it's a coach and teacher who's going to see the things that you might need to see.
Yeah.
Well, and this makes me think of like the term you also use, the man of action. What does it mean to be one?
It means to take one simple idea and put it into practice and try to use it, as opposed to collect a million ideas and just sit around. I use the metaphor, or I have all these like steel ball bearings, these big, I have this sack of steel that I punch, but like in those ball bearings, I introduced it to these children, and I took a wine bottle and there's like marbles, and I put one in the bottle and I swirled it around and I'm like, and then you pour it out and it'll come out in your hand. Right. But if I filled it with marbles and I turn it upside down, it'll make a bottleneck and none of those marbles will come out. So to be a person of action, it means take an idea and then try to put it into practice. And then now take another idea. Because once you put it into practice, you keep widening that bottleneck. Because there are moments where I can multitask, right? Me and Daniel Wu, we were talking about this. Like when he's on set, he can act, produce, write. I mean, he can do everything, right? When I'm in the dojo or when I'm in a studio, I can do a million things because I've put so much of that into practice. The bottleneck is really wide. But then I was learning web design. Yeah, that's a pinhole. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you saw my face just completely.
So that's a new level. So I'm not multitasking anymore. I'm hyper focused. All like everything is canceled. I'm not switching gears. I'm not code switching. I'm not doing anything, right? Because it's a new level. So it takes a lot of energy to learn, right? Once you've integrated it, then you're effortless. So when people might look at you and say, wow, you do a lot, you're like, I've been on computers for a long time. So I have an aptitude here. This bottleneck is like, it's a fire hose. But then, they might bring you into some other thing. And then that bottleneck just goes, just gets really small. And you're like, no, I'm going to learn one thing. I'm going to learn what parentheses does. Today, I'm going to learn how to put things in parentheses, and that's what I mean by a man of action. Like you should know, and you should be actualized, and you should know what a barrier to entry is and know when you've earned your place on that starting line. Yeah.
Well, this goes back to self-awareness too. And I always talk about macro and micro focus. And so understanding what do you need to focus on today? What do you need to focus on the week, month, and year, 10 years, 5 years, having a big picture view, but also like, what do you need to do today? Like today, interviews, perfect. Yeah. Like I'm focusing on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Workflow, efficiency. Yeah. It's so important.
Well, and it's interesting too, because you see patterns very well. You're talking about systems thinking earlier, and that was something you mentioned in one of your videos. I find that multidisciplinary people, or linky brains as they're sometimes called, are the type of people who are systematic thinkers. How do you describe it per se?
God, it changed my life. When you work, I worked in restaurants starting in 12. And it just teaches, like, it's really cool because every dish is like you're starting and finishing a little project. And I love that. Right. So it's like you walk in and it's like, you want to boil all of that water, so it's like you want to put the pot on, turn on the oven. So all that's going. So by the time you cut your veggies, you can put, it's like everything has a flow and
optimizing it too.
And the cool thing is the stress is we open at 5. Period. So you burn it, we got to take it, we got to 86 it, there's all these things. And so it teaches that workflow. And I think every human being should work in a restaurant for at least 6 months just to learn workflow, because whether it's good work or bad work or fun or not, you're not going to get an environment where you get more reps of starting and stopping a project. Right. Because you have the global, like we're opening tonight, we need to get these 10 dishes done. And then you have the small, the creative, where you're like, and then we're going to do these specials. And then you have the real time where now we're in service. So every table is its own little project, and every dish on that table is its own little project, and they all need to come together and do this thing. And then we need to clean. And that's potent.
Well, and it depends on how good your team is too. They're doing their positions.
Yeah, we have to communicate, on what your position train each other. We have to work together. So I guess all of that kind of came through, and then I saw that, and then I was also a musician, and then in music, you got to learn the notes, and then you got to learn the chords, and then you have to learn the coordination, and then you have to put it all together. You got to learn songs. And so I guess like music, and that's why I love music, movement, and food. It's kind of all the same.
What was your life like as a traveling musician?
It was smelly and in a van. Yeah. It was a lot of
sounds delightful.
I guess my first time like touring out of town was when I was 13 years old in the punk rock scene. And I'd sobered up at that time. So it's like I just spent a lot of time around a bunch of people on drugs and drinking while I was not. And I was out late and you're in these loud rooms watching inspiring people. And I love musicians with all my heart, and I love music with all my heart. And music is, I think, the emotional intention of a culture. So that's cool. But there was also another part of it where you're just the back of, I've seen the world, but from the back of a club. So you haven't seen anything. I think that a lot of musicians can say that. Like, we've seen the back of a club in every town possible. But you work hard. Like, being a musician that's why there's a lot of skinny musicians out there, because you're just working your ass off every night and that's also, you're opening a business constantly. You not only need to have your team, but you need to have your product, and you need to be able to execute it on a regular basis. And then you have to sell your merch, and then the internet kind of, sort of beat us up a little bit. And then,
with like Napster and whatnot.
Yeah. And it's actually done that again with training. That's kind of why I'm not training too many people right now. Cause like, there's so many trainers that are just on the internet right now, giving their stuff away for exposure. They just want likes, as opposed to, it's if we could really learn a lot from musicians in the late 90s, because how they adapted, because our industry, fitness, and all these things that can just be done through this format, we're giving it away for attention. And hopefully we're going to get exposure. And you can ask any musician if that helped them, and it didn't. I can guarantee you they'll say no. One out of every, 80 maybe, but it never helped. And, but touring as a musician was amazing. You make, the people, it's really cool how close you are. Like, I still have guys to this day. It's like, I lived in a van with you. And I just got off the phone with my soulmate, Chad, who, he and I started performing together in 1997. I was there when he met his.
I was too.
And I was there when he met his wife. I've known his wife since she was in the 3rd grade, and I love their children, and you know what I mean. And it's like,
it's just that connection.
Yeah, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything more potent and more human than music. So yeah, it's great.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I was interviewing a guy named Sebastian. He did a documentary about like the music down in South America. I can't remember if it was Peru or something like that, but just how like there's like certain cultural songs that different little villages and hamlets will play. Yeah. And there was no one like coordinating it or teaching it. It's just everyone happened to like know it. It was just something that you learned by culture, by proxy. And then everyone just knew it. And so there would always have these parties and these groups and just experiencing that music and culture together.
And not only that, but it's like, music is, I've said a million times, like, we're not fish or birds. When you watch them, they move together, right? We need music to do that. We need music. I remember this a long time ago. My dad, they put they were doing construction on this little bridge that was leading to this, a little place we lived on in Florida. And it was an S-curve. It went boom. And it just did that. And he just went, oh man. And I was like, what? And he goes, there's going to be so many wrecks. I was like, why? He goes, because we don't know how to move together. And sure enough, there was constant wrecks. And then even on our bridge here in San Francisco, the bridge heading from Oakland to San Francisco, they put an S-curve in the bridge. There was like something like this profound amount. There's more than one accident a day. Like, it was just like, because we don't know how to move together. We need music in order to move together. So it's really, but it puts you in the flow.
You know what's interesting?
Huh?
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting idea. Like, I don't know if it's in Germany, but there's like a road that when you drive over the little bumps, it plays music through the vibrations. I wonder if they need to do that on the bridge.
There's one in Florida. It plays like Swanee River or something like that. Yes. So I wish they would choose better songs.
That's crazy. Yeah. But like, what if like you put some kind of song in there that got everyone to actually move into the rhythm of it?
Yeah. I'm all for integrating music more into our lives. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Where did you travel to? Because, sure, you only saw the backstage, but what places did you end up going to?
Well, just kind of every state. You've just been, it's like mainly, and then I remember getting to play out in Poland after the wall fell. Poland and Hungary and Czech Republic and all that stuff. Czech and Slovakia. That was really cool. Berlin after Berlin, Germany after in that first 5 years after the wall fell was just it was amazing. It was amazing. And it was cool because it was very impractical because like when they saw an American musician playing rock and roll, it was real. It was so real. So I really like that. It was also interesting too. I tell the story. It's up on my site. Like, I remember having to make money because you kind of have to do some, they call it black work, you know, kind of, you just have to make money sometimes. And so I had to run sound for out in this East German farm. And so I go there with this guy from me and this Indonesian musician, and we just went there and we set up a sound system. And so keep in mind, I have dreadlocks like down on my waist. And I was just like, just this rat and a punk kid. And then this guy was a kind of an Indonesian kind of, you know, rocker. And we set up this sound system, and then we leave, we go eat, and we come back. And then the farmer just looks at me, and he just slides me over like this kind of box. And the box, I kind of opened up, and there's like a gun in it. And, you know, it was weird. And so I remember going out, and I go to the sound system, where we're walking to the sound system, and you just see all these guys, and they're chanting, "We want war" in German. And it was a Nazi festival. And so me and this Indonesian guy were like, oh shit. And so we have to, so we kind of pull the sound system behind the speakers to like backstage to where it's like, I don't want anyone looking at us. So we get it behind there, and then all these problems start happening on stage, like, you know, instruments breaking, and, you know, but polymath, I know how to fix things. So I'm running on stage fixing amps and changing strings, and the drums fall over, so I fix the drums. And then we're loading out that night, and sure enough, like, they're just around our van, and I'm like telling this guy, I'm like, I guess I'm gonna have to shoot people. I don't know what's going on. And so we're terrified. And then the main guy, he gives his speech. He was the drummer of this band, and he gives his speech that night. And then he says something to these guys, and then they just kind of look at him, and they just walk over, and they grab our stuff, and they carry it to the van. And then I asked the guy, he spoke a little bit of English, and I was like, thank you. And he goes, hey, you helped us. We wouldn't have been able to do this if it wasn't for you fixing my drums and his guitar. So he's like, so there you go. And I was like, thank you. And I go, hey, out of all the musicians, you were the best tonight. I go, who's your favorite drummer? I've never heard any of your music. And he goes, well, I'm listening to this band. And I go, can I hear them? And he like lets me hear them. And they're horrible. And sure enough, he goes, okay, who are you listening to? And I was like, well, I'm listening to this Maceo Parker Live on Planet Groove album. And so he was like, well, let me hear it. And there's this moment where this James Brown's drummer, and Maceo Parker was James Brown's sax player, and his band was playing. And it was his first time ever hearing black music. And there's this breakdown of the drums, and the sax is just going. And he just was like, and sure enough, I swear to you, I gave him the album, and sure enough, like, he's in Berlin a week later. I gave him my phone number because he was so happy. And so he calls me, and he's now playing in a hip hop band. He's wrapped up in black culture. He just never, ever knew about that because he grew up on this.
Never was exposed.
His father was a Nazi. He grew up on the other side of this wall. He knew nothing. And it taught me about like the idea of like how to disempower hate, like and then that was the move. Like I realized like, what is the difference between a child and an adult, right? Like a child is that thing that goes, I hate you, mom. And the adult is the thing that says, go to your room, and they make you dinner, and you come back and the hate's gone. But a child says, I hate you to another child, and they beat each other up, and they create organizations to take each other down, and wars are created. And so I realized like, man, fuck, music's cool. So yeah. So I used to have,
that's cool.
Yeah. So that was like one of my favorite touring moments, I think. Yeah.
We've been able to change someone's mind. And so after doing musician, you were also doing stunt work. And so between the music, the stunts, course creation, martial arts, all the content creation that you've done too, and much more, how have you balanced all of this interdisciplinary life?
Well, I think this is my balance. And I think this is something that's important. There are some people where their job is the thing that funds the things that they love to do. And then there are other people where their job is the thing they love to do. Right. And I think there's not a lot of separation between who I am and what I do for a living. Right. which can hurt you later. Like I've been trying to put a separation between those things, right? Like when it's your name on the door, then there is kind of a thing there, right? So the way I balance it out is I'm lucky that my job is to teach people how to balance out intense lifestyles. So that works.
Learn from yourself.
Yeah. So I'm very lucky to show that because there's been an illusion around like a hyper productivity through what I do. But again, I started when I was a child. Like I don't do anything that I didn't start before I was a teenager, right? I mean, martial arts I started probably when I was 4 or 5 years old. Music I started when I was like 11, and I started cooking at a really young age. I mean, I started cooking professionally when I was 12 years old, right? So those things, I mean, the only thing that I have started was this has been the hardest thing to balance out, is sitting on a computer. But I'm just lucky before that, and extremely grateful for this, that before that I developed habits of knowing how to feel when my body is out of balance.
Getting up and doing something about it.
I think, we talk about meditation and people think there's a lot of time, but I think taking, if you were to talk to like criminals, like violent people that have, they always talk about if they would have just taken one breath, it would have changed everything. And I think that's really important, of like, when you're in this world, just take a second to just, every new room you walk in, just look around, widen your vision for a second and take a breath, and feel how you feel, and just say, right now, maybe I need to take this phone call on a walk. Or with me, I know that my routine is, if I'm going to have a very physical day, the thing I do in the morning is I'll like meditate and maybe read or like send some emails. But if I'm going to have a very computer day, in the morning, I'll wake up and work out. Like I always do the opposite. Like people have a morning routine, but I always know what my day is going to hold. And like if I'm about to serve people all day, like I'm constantly doing like massage and holding, I do what's called emotional mapping, which is kind of profiling of our emotions and the ways that we're carrying in our bodies, and emotional intelligence work. But if I'm in your emotional space all day, in the morning, I'm just going to, I'm going to work out. I'm going to make sure I'm strong, and I'm going to make sure that I do something selfish for myself, so I don't resent you for making me put myself down all day.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's important.
Balance it out, so to speak. Well, and I think that's an important concept for a lot of polymaths to do too, is balance out what they're doing. Like if you're focusing on other people or yourself, or focusing on what your ikigai is. You were mentioning earlier how it's your personal brand that everyone knows, Matt Lucas, but then there's also the idea of like, okay, you have your business and you have that kind of separation, the company. And so there is a separation of what you're doing, who you are, and how you approach the every day.
Well, and if we look at that one of my favorite quotes of all time, you're a human being, not a human doing, right? And so of all the things you do, what is it going to make you be? You know what I mean? Like what is that? Cause I mean, how many times are people like, when you talk to people, I was talking to someone about, like, you talked to me about what are these places that I've gone to as a touring artist. And I remind people that when you read like TripAdvisor or what these cool towns are, just really think about the way they're written up. They write up maybe about schools and education, but it's always about like the nightlife and the food. So what it's showing me is the people that are writing the reviews of these cities are consumers, and oftentimes just alcoholics, right? Almost like, really think about it. Like, everyone, like so many people love Austin, but it's like all they talk about is like, they talk about the music, but I feel like I'm reading reviews from an alcoholic all the time.
Bars and parties.
Yeah, but that's what you do. You're going there to consume, but like, what do you contribute and what do you create, right? Like, what are we here to contribute, right? Are you here to contribute a person that loves to buy booze? Or are you here to contribute to the conversation that has, right? So that's important, I think.
Yeah, like one of the places I want to move to or travel to is Austin, Texas. And like you were saying there, like there's a lot of party stuff going on, but it's also one of the points of like South by Southwest and all these conventions and all these places where I could meet people and actually contribute, maybe even speak at and contribute to that place as well.
And that's the thing that I remember one of the things in touring, one of the reasons why I stopped performing and just kind of stopped performing was I kind of remember this moment where it used to be like, if you and I were going to go out and watch music, we're like, hey, let's go out and let's go see this band. And then we might go there and have some drinks. Right. But there was a time where I felt the people in the room were like, hey, let's go have some drinks. And we get there and we're like, oh, wow, there's a band. It's like it switched. Right. So like it used to be, art and this, and then we have these other things down there to kind of adorn the environment. Right. But now like with social media and all these things, it's about you now. It's always about you, your brand. So when I'm there at the band, I need to get a picture of me looking at the band. Like, I need to I need to let you know that I was there. And that was really interesting to me. So I was like, I don't really feel like partaking in this. It's like, I want to contribute in the way that we can say, your physical health is you being like capable, and your emotional health is you being available and present. And then, but your spiritual health is you can just sit there and enjoy it. You don't have to take a picture of yourself doing it all the time. You can be there as opposed to do there, like, look at me doing this, as opposed to like, I'm here right now. And go on.
I was just saying, anytime you see like a eclipse or some kind of a phenomenal event, you can see everyone using their cameras, looking through the cameras instead of looking right at it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I won this. I did this. What do you call it? A literature storytelling thing. I had this girlfriend. She was a publisher, and she was bringing in. They did this private. All these storytellers came around. A lot of published authors. And she's like, Matt, you should read. And I was like, no, I'm not going to read. And so but then I found out the prize was this ridiculous, it was just ice cream, but I've never had anything like it. It was made with these medical devices. And I was like, okay, I'll read. And, once I realized money wouldn't motivate me, but like this, that I could just buy, like totally motivate.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm reading. And I won everything. I won all 3 rounds, and I came home with all this ice cream, and I was like, and I was like, how did I win? What? I was like, she goes, well, your stories are things that you actually experienced, and their stories were things that they went into the room just to watch it to where they could have a story. And she's like, so again, were you on stage watching, or did you go to that Black Flag concert and actually get in a fight to get there and ride in the back of a truck to get there, and then when you got there you lost your phone? Or did you buy a ticket and you stand there and take a picture and go, woo, we're having a good time, and then you're talking, because your take on that story is going to be like that movie I just saw. It's just going to be a bunch of hashtags and algorithmic keywords that are going to let me know that you're trying to tell me that you went to that concert. And who cares? You know what I mean?
It's all fleeting.
Yeah, and one of my buddies a long time ago, he's a rock star, and it was really cool. It's like, he says something really great. Someone was like, why don't you ever put this stuff on social media? He goes, I'm a fucking rock star. You wish you knew what I did. And I was like,
mysterious.
There you go. Like you have to realize, like, when someone is the pinnacle of what they do, you're going to call them one of two things. They're either a ninja or a rock star. Straight up. Like, or if you're great at programming, they'll be like, man, you got a black belt in programming, or you're a programming rock star. It's like everything boils down to something martial arts related, right? Or Zen, it's always something martial related, or it's always something rock star related. So like, think about it. Like, no one at their pinnacle game will ever be like, wow, you're like a soccer player of programming. No one, that person can do, who cares about, like, you kick a ball and you're in great cardiovascular shape. Congratulations.
Maybe a third one would be polymath. Like, you're a polymath.
Yeah, you're a polymath. Yeah. But I mean, think about martial artists, like martial arts. Think of feng shui, acupuncture. There's Taoist sexual practices. All these, like, there's music, calligraphy. All that came from martial artists. The ultimate polymaths were martial artists. And the polymath thing isn't the fact that you're learning all of them at the same time. You just, when you're young, you're a kind of an athlete. And when you're older, you're a performer. And then when you're done performing, you kind of become a coach. And then when you stop coaching, you become a philosopher. And then you become a writer. And then you become a space holder and a spiritual. Like, the polymath is a tale of a complete practice. Like that's what it's doing.
Well, let me ask you this thing. Something I ask all my guests is, what is a polymath to you?
I think it's that. I think
This is
a polymath is also someone that just like
it's a complete practice.
Yeah, it's I always say part of this complete breakfast, part of this complete practice. We should be seeking balance, and I think when you a polymath person, from what I've experienced lately, I mean, because I've never heard that word until I met you, is I learned it from it's people that are truly seeking freedom. Right. I mean, everyone I know is that way. I mean, I have family up in West Virginia, and they're the most capable human beings you'll ever, you find these guys up there that made it to the 7th grade, dropped out of school, and they're more brilliant, more capable, and more joyful than anyone I've met around here. And these guys are they're the most inspiring people I've ever met. But it's to understand what it means to be truly free. Because freedom in this construct out here is I can be able to have the financial ability to do whatever I want, whenever I want. That is a side of freedom. But there's another type of freedom that is like, I can create my own resources. So therefore you might not be able to go snowboarding every weekend or to Burning Man, but you can grow your own food. But if you have that type of freedom, it might mean you're not taking as many vacations or you're not consuming as much, right? So we have to ask ourselves, is our freedom that of taking up space, or is our freedom that of creating space? And I think the polymath is kind of a person that wants to more create space, as opposed to go to Austin and just be like, I will drink Pabst Blue Ribbon here and whiskey here and this. The polymath is like, I want to go there and run sound with this band and then jam with these guys. And then I want to help my friend build a barn. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like you're trying to, it's the path of contribution. I think it's important.
Well, and I think it's just divergent too. Like if you look at your living space, you mentioned how you have different spaces for different areas, massage and meditation and boxing and recording. And it's also a matter of creation too. You're creating connections with people when they come over. You're creating content. You're also creating just various different things. You're not sitting there consuming as much and saying, oh, I can buy this for this room, buy this for this room. You have this stuff, but it's because you had a need for it, not because you want to buy it for the sake of buying.
Yeah, it takes up space. Yeah, you'd be surprised.
I love both.
You'd be surprised on how much stuff is in this world and how many tools. I think, if life is relationships, I think we should really start asking, what is our relationship with the tools that we're using on a day-to-day basis? The concept that I use is a self-driving car. Like, do you really want a self-driving car to where you can just send more emails while you're on the road? Or do you want the capacity to jump in a vehicle and take the people that you love to a place? Right? Because if you've ever done like a track day or like learn to drive as a skill, you don't want a self-driving car. You want a rad car.
I want a self-driving car for the sake of having all of them being self-driving cars, so that way it's a efficient system and less likely to crash. That's why I want it, but not because I want more time.
Well, and this is my thing with that. I always say, do I really want the people that whenever my Zoom upgrades, nothing works? Do I want those people designing the thing? It's like I tell people all the time, like, intelligence is not wise. And if you do walk without the capacity to take the people that you love to places, like, what does it do to the vibration that you carry into the room when you stand there amongst people that can? Right? If you've ever watched what happens to people that are capable, and when they walk into a room full of people that are not, this is how, if an incapable person does achieve power through whatever means they do, that's how demagogues and tyrants are born, because they try to hold on to it with all their might. But like, if you have capacity, you can share. Like, it's abundance. Like, true capacity is power is soft, power is open. But like, when we start trying to just achieve these moments of success, and I remember working with this group, and they were trying to build exoskeletons, right? And they were talking about movement, and I was like, hey, before you design this stuff, you should really watch the Oppenheimer videos just to see what technology might be used for. And then none of them really wanted to watch that, just because I was like a total downer. And I was like, no, you should know that when you build a thing, it can be used to harm others, and know what is that relationship you have with the tool. But when you're sitting in like stop and go traffic, self-driving car all the way, right? But when you're on a windy road, turn that shit off. Yeah, turn it off.
It's funny. One of my clients this past summer, because obviously with COVID, I was cut off from my main work, but I was able to teach this person at their house, and they lived pretty decently ways out of town. And I had to drive down this long, windy road, 55 miles per hour, because it's out of the city. And it was interesting because you get kind of into the flow of it too.
Magic.
Yeah.
We were doing a lot of stunt driving in Ireland, and so good. I have a story of that I was telling, like, it took me like 2 years to pay off all the tickets that I got in Ireland because we were doing a lot of stunt driving, we were doing a lot of truck driving, and I was also, I had a big TV show paying fully for my fully insured rental car. So, we always say the fastest car on earth is a fully insured rental car. And
I want to drive on the Autobahn. That'd be fun too.
So me and Daniel Wu, I'll send you the story. Did you see the thing where he and I went to the Nürburgring?
I was watching the 2-hour long videos. I don't know if
I have a short little story up on my Instagram on the Matt Lucas. I put all the ones that aren't like wellness related up there, but it's like me and Daniel Wu, we went to the Nürburgring to race. But we got snowed out. So we had this M2, like the tracky, the real fast M2, because there's a couple of versions of it. And so we just took that thing around just crazy. I mean, but we took it on like dirt roads and stuff. Yeah, it was and then we ended up having like a spa weekend in France. It was really fun. It was an amazing weekend.
That's cool. We just
kept doing shit.
That's awesome. It was funny when I learned to drive. I was never scared to drive. I just never got around to doing it. But when I finally did, I was like, now I want to learn to fly.
Oh yeah.
I was like, because I was like, I'm already done with this now. And as I've practiced over the past year and a half or so, I was like, okay, I'm good at this. Now I wanted to go do something else that's better.
Manning, I mean, that means you're close to being Southern. It's like there's that joke, Rory Scovel, the comedian. He always talks about how Southerners, it's a point of pride. If we can't drive it, we're humiliated. Like if I can't drive it, there's a thing. Like I tried to do a day, and I was thinking I wanted to get my helicopter license, and I went out on a helicopter with this guy, and I was like, never mind, these things just want to kill me. Like a helicopter just wants to kill you. So I think I'm out. But
but like a plane might be
plane.
Nice.
I think I would be happier flying a plane than helicopters are the physics.
Maybe a quadcopter.
Do they make those? Can you? Okay.
Yeah. I've seen someone actually ride one. It was crazy.
No way.
Not in person, but I saw it online. It was really cool. My next question here is something you kind of brought to my attention, is like the seeker. So what does it mean to be a seeker?
Well, a lot of times, I mean, that's kind of what the big three is about too. I mean, think about how many people, how old are you?
Okay, I'm 25.
25. When you hit 30, you're going to be talking to all your friends, and you guys are going to stop, and you guys are going to sit around being like, the only music I listen to is what I listened to in high school. And seeking is a muscle, right? It is a muscle, and it's a thing, and we are the only ways we seek right now. I don't want to blanket too many people, but to seek is to just be looking for the next little step. It's not being a neophile. It's not like, what's the new thing? I'm trying to dig deeper, right? I'm always trying to dig a little bit deeper into my relationships with the things around me. So, it's kind of like, I don't need a new guitar. I want to dig deeper into that guitar. I still have the same guitar from the 8th grade. It's like, it's the only guitar I played live. And it's these things, you just want to keep going deep into the things that you have. And I think that's important. Seeking, do you love music? Well, then seek it, right? Seek out teachers, like surround yourself with teachers. The amount of times I'll talk to people that they got, now luckily people are doing like yoga retreats and stuff. At least they're going out and they're trying to do something, or they're trying to dive deeper into who they are. Mm-hmm. But you have to seek that. Like, that's like the whole man of action thing. I mean, that is like, you should be
have to go out of your
Yeah,
way.
you have to go out of your way, and also don't be weird about it. Like there's this whole thing of like go hard. It's like I'm gonna go into ketosis, rip my shirt off, and like it's on. You know, it's like dude, chill out. Like hard ground, soft body, like experience, and that's the seeker. Is like you're trying to tune in fully all the time. It's important, man. It's fucking important.
Well, it's interesting, hyper awareness, but also stillness as well.
Yeah, you can always. It's sort of like, you know, it's when you're flying that plane. It's like you have your checklist. Okay, I got this. I got this. I got this. Okay, I fingers, toes, everything's here. Now I'm ready to do the thing. Right now I'm ready to learn. I'm doing all these videos right now. This is my dear friend. She taught me how to cut my hair. And it's all about like, but I need the tools first, and I need to set my space, and you know, let's make sure that I have everything is okay. So now I'm comfortable enough to learn this skill, right? Which I'm never doing that again.
Hey, no, you gotta try it, because one of the first things I did in the quarantine was buy clippers and learn to cut my hair. I've done it 4 times now. I've messed up twice out of them, and I had to like shave the rest off, but it was fine because it was a learning experience. And it's one of those things where now I'm never gonna have to pay for a haircut again unless I really want.
Okay, so this is another reason why I like the seeker idea. Is this when you're a seeker, you will genuinely, wholeheartedly try things, okay, and therefore, when it's time to cut your hair and you go, I don't want to, I'm going to pay someone, you can personally reject it, but you're not closed-minded. Like I sheetrocked this building, and I put in a toilet, and I've done electrical, and so it's like I sought out that knowledge, and it did not inspire me. I never want to sheetrock another ceiling again, and now I genuinely, with all my heart, want to hire somebody. You know what I mean? So there's no weird self-judgment around like I gave up or I did this. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like the web design. Like we both sought it out. We're both good at it, but it's just a matter of we just don't want to do it anymore. Like let's hire someone else to do it. I've been having the CSS problem. I think I told you last time, and I'm like, screw it. I'm just gonna hire somebody because I just need to focus on what's more important.
So yeah, you just sent me this thing where you're saying, yeah, let's do the automation. I've tried like 90 different things, right? So the reason why my courses are up the way they are is because I tried like 6 or 7 different things, and all these I tried so much.
Yes, the learning management systems and whatnot.
I did so many things. I mean, I spent a year out of my life every night. But again, it's fun. There's a person that enjoys that. So like when you want to go drinking, or I didn't have a Netflix account. Like my Netflix account was learning tutorials. So yeah.
Yeah, you and I are quite alike, my friend. It's funny because I'll just sit there and go on a binge. On WordPress, just for example, small little tangent here. I wanted to see what plugins were available on that platform, so I knew what I could do with it. And so I went through the plugin directory, all 11,000 plugins on the WordPress directory, and I was just insane. Every single page. Yep. I think it was like 10,000 pages, something like that. 11,000. No,
and I've done that. Like I had a guy that was hosting my thing. And he was like, "Hey man, you gotta chill out with all." He's like, "Cause I didn't have just a plugin about it. I had like 9, and I'm trying them all out, and then so."
Well, you gotta be careful with the cross contamination too. Sometimes they break each other. Yeah,
I know that now.
Yeah, I learned that too. Something you mentioned earlier about martial arts as being like this holistic thing, and I wanted to go into that too because I guess we're kind of running out of time here. But you find and have mentioned that martial arts is like taking a holistic approach in the world, and from the ways of fighting to the arts of healing, calligraphy, meditation, and more, like you mentioned earlier, it is the integration of knowledge, philosophy, and science that creates what we call martial arts. And I love how you say that is more. And can you explain that more, actually?
Well, when we think of martial arts, we think of combat sports, right? But the athleticism and the competition of martial arts was traditionally the path to self-discovery. Like if you and I were in a village, we would compete together in order to be strong and capable to where we can protect our village, to where we can farm and still be strong, because I'm not going to beat you up to where I snap your arm because now I got to do your chores, right? We're constantly pushing each other to get better. All boats rise, right? And then it's also realizing that, and no matter your gender, no matter your size, every person, if they tap into their tools, you're no longer competing with me. It's just like in business. Like you might sell this and I might sell this, and we're working together. We might have a competition to maybe make a better product, but we're not trying to bring each other down because we need it, right? And so it's tapping into the natural system of things. So I really feel that like the way that I've always approached martial arts is that I don't approach it as a combat sport. I like combat sports. They teach you to use your techniques, but once you've learned, and I have to remind everybody of this, low-level martial artist is beating the shit out of things. Like, I don't have to teach you to get into a fight or to lash out. I don't need that. So then higher level martial arts is maybe you win the fight. And then the next higher level martial arts is maybe you kind of can evade and you can call your shot. Boom, boom. Right. And then later you get into like, I can just move you out the door. And then after that, your presence takes it away. And then after that, you become a healer. Right. So, and I'm sorry to kind of go on, but it's like I always say, a scalpel in the hands of a novice, you are a murderer. And in the hands of an expert, you are a healer. So that's martial arts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And something that's just was blaring in my brain there, because maybe think of the elements as well as the 4 pillars, as well as what you mentioned about polymathy earlier, about each stage in your life is a same knowledge, different practice, different things that you're doing. And the interesting thing was when you're starting out with martial arts, it may be physical. You're working on the body pillar and actually training your body, training it to do certain things. Eventually after that, you can get more emotional awareness and intelligence and understanding yourself, understanding the emotions of your opponents. So you might work on the emotions pillar. Then after that, you start to learn things about the actual martial arts, the mental aspect. What do you need to know to improve? And eventually you start to understand the spirituality of it, the wisdom behind it. And again, meshes along the line with the elements and the stages of polymathy, as you alluded to earlier.
And that's all it is. So I feel like if we are practicing something, so that, I mean, the 5 elements for me was, I realized that there are so many things that we have to make living at and we have to do in our lives that are not complete. And so I created, so I started putting out the 5 elements because you can look at anything you do and turn it into a holistic practice. You can, but you just have to, it's not about learning more. It's about adjusting your lens to be able to view it as, this is my life path and I can turn it into a life path. Like, everything, it's cheesy 90s band, everything is Zen, right? You can do that. You can create a life path out of anything. And I think it's really important to be able to find that, and to where we're not feeling so incomplete. There's so many people that there's a reason why there's such thing as a midlife crisis, and it's so common because you realize you've put so much of yourself down in order to achieve something that isn't fulfilling you. But stop learning new things.
Well,
dive in, seek.
Sometimes finding your ikigai is a matter of doing, not a matter of learning.
Yeah. And also ask yourself, like, what it is, you know, kind of to balance on that. And I don't actually get into the words, but it's like, it's like, what do I need to be? Not what do I need to do? Like, what do I need? What do I need to be to get the next step? Do I need to be more calm, more aware, more present? Because it's not an act of doing anymore. Like, you can only do so much until you need to be something, right?
My previous endeavor, the United Living Construct that I had built, I was doing stuff. I was creating content. I was learning WordPress. I was doing all these different things. But I realized that I wasn't good enough yet to do that. And it wasn't that like I was dumb or something like that. I had skills and knowledge that I needed to acquire before I could do that. And so I was thinking about, what do I need to be in order to have this work? And so I pivoted to poly-innovator.
Yeah, mise en place. That's all it is. Like, what are the little tools I need to build in order to create this? It's Voltron, man. Like, you know, it's like
putting it all together.
So it's all about that.
The leaky brain. How can we focus our thoughts and words and actions to achieve the outcomes desired?
Ooh, I have no idea. I
mean, you kind of just talked about it already. But
personally, I always take a breath. I write a lot. Writing, they say, teaches you how you think. And when you know how you think, then you can start using that as a tool, as opposed to letting your thoughts run away. My mind goes in a million places, but since I write so much, and I've written a million songs and I've written a million pages, and I at least can always refer back to something that I've actually had a thought, sat there, read that thought, dove into the way that I do think. And so therefore I'm not surprised by that. And so, and focusing your mind is something very simple. Like, we should have the goal, point yourself in a direction, but at the same time, don't focus too far it's one step at a time. fighting really teaches you that, especially jujitsu. And because when I'm not diving into the submission right out of the gate, I need to get your structure, and then it's a conversation, and your movement is a conversation, even in the universe, right? So my 1 makes your 2, which makes my 3. But if I were to write out what I was going to say on this conversation before we started talking, and I just start saying conversation is going to go a little weird. And I think so many of us are planning our ways into trying to control, as opposed to being like, I've built the tools. I can adapt if I have to. So when I throw this jab, I was assuming that this person would just get punched in the face, but instead they slipped to the side and threw it through their right. And you're like, oh, so this is there. I know, it's like I have everything in its place to where I can at least be conscious enough, right?
And you have to react to it differently too. Yeah. Well, and it's like these questions that I ask you, I had a plan. Like, okay, I was going to ask this question, and then if I need to, I'll jump around. At one point, you mentioned something about the elements. It's like, okay, well, it's much better for me to ask the question about the elements than something else. And it's a reactionary conversation. Right. I don't want to be confined to the questions, obviously. You and I could sit here for 2 hours and chat without any questions. But there was a lot of specific things I wanted to learn from you or to talk to you about.
Yeah. I mean, when we used to train, I used to make young people recite the lyrics to The Gambler. Kenny, because I mean, you have to know this. It's like listen to the old guys. Listen to, it's like you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. And it's kind of like, and we can't judge ourselves that's the thing. If it's sort of like, anxiety is you're focusing too much on the future, and judgment is you're focusing too much on the past. And sometimes we can be a little too present and hyper focused to when you're going to get caught by things. So that's why I liked martial arts and things with that real time. So when you're sparring, even friendly sparring, even slow sparring, cooperative sparring, your whole life and your whole personality is unfolding second by second by second by second. Again, I throw the jab and I know who you are. And then you show me who you are, and then that shows me who I am. And if I hit and the thing that I didn't want happens while I'm thinking, oh man, I'm so stupid. You've already knocked me out 10, you've already taken me down.
Yeah. You can't overthink it.
And nature doesn't allow you to do that. It's like surfing, if you're like, oh man, I missed that wave. The next one's coming, man. Like, relax.
Right. Well, honestly, like content creation, a lot of people are very upset about how they missed the waves of YouTube, the waves of podcasting or something like that, but it's going to come back in some shape or form. I was on Vine, but I did not act upon that platform. I didn't grow with it, but I was on there creating content. And then when TikTok came around, I was able to act upon it because I learned from my mistake the last time. There's going to be some app afterwards. It's going to be the same thing where if I make mistakes on TikTok, I'll be able to redo it then. And that's just one example, but it's just one of those things where some things repeat, some things don't, but learn from the mistakes and try to apply it somewhere else in life.
And also look at, again, learn from musicians, because these are ways that, in the video world, it just as like music turned everyone, when Napster came out and then, computers got better processing power, everyone got Pro Tools or GarageBand, and everyone was a producer for like 2 years. And then, but what we're forgetting is everyone tried to, all those people that were trying to make those records started appreciating what a real sound engineer and what a real producer does, because they produced a lot of crap and didn't put it out. And then other people started seeking deeper. And then we created a lot of great, so it did put a lot of power in young people's hands, and we produced, there were a lot of great producers that did come out of that. But the barrier to entry does filter out the ones that are actually willing to do the work, like no matter what. So TikTok and Vine and all that stuff, my joke is, my conspiracy is, well, I call reels just like mediocre in a bikini. I mean, that's all I call it. But I feel that there's a conspiracy trying to get everyone lip syncing too much. I don't agree with lip syncing. Not a big fan, but it's not my art. But the side behind it is, it's fun for people, and why should I ever judge that? I just don't want to watch it. It's like, I don't eat McDonald's either. I mean, just because it's the most popular doesn't mean it's the best. So there are people that will keep producing and will keep doing the reps. And then those people kind of pop up and they rise up. There's just a little bit more noise, but honestly, it's like going into a kid's karate class. You know, I mean, in a couple years they'll lose steam, and then you know, the ones that are left are the ones that are going to stick to it. You know,
Yeah, all about the dedication and taking action.
Yeah.
So something that we haven't touched on too much is Total Be Wellness. Can you explain more on that and the courses that you offer?
Yeah. So Total BS, I started off as Total Balancing Sequence, but I also say, you know, it's kind of a play on words. Everything's BS if you don't practice. So, as a martial artist and a musician, I don't care how good your guitar is and how awesome your tank top is and how tight your yoga pants are. You're either showing up or you're not. So that being said, the courses that I'm putting out aren't the ones that you're not getting it online. There are some things like, for example, like club swinging and Persian martial arts and all these other Qigong sets. You can get similar, but this is the dialed in variations and the ways to practice it. And it started when I was in Ireland. And then I got a call from a movie producer who threw his back out, and then a couple other stunt guys. And then I remember in this 1 week, I was asked to go to LA, Austin, Croatia, and like Spain or something like that. And it was all clients of mine. And it was all people that I looked up to and really wanted to help. And I was like, and they were like, hey, you showed me this thing when we were training the other day, but what was it? And you showed me this thing. And so there's no shortage of people teaching you how to punch, kick. There's no shortage of people teaching you how to get all swole, but there's a tremendous shortage of people that aren't thinking like that. No offense to these collegiate sports guys, but they don't care about you once you graduate. They don't care. Athletes, my dad would always tell me, athletes are food. That's it. Like, you're there to score the points, to get the coach, the job, to get your deal. But the only reason why you can train like you do is because the technology allows us to replace your knee, or there's a line of people behind you that are willing to take your job. But I'm the person that's going to stand there and say, you're the person that's going to have your knee. You're the person that has to be in your body, and you're the person that needs to balance it out. Because not only that, if you lose your movement, you become grumpy. You become an escapist. You treat people poorly, right? You stand there and you have to bore me with tales of how you used to be so strong. I'm over it. You have any idea how many 25-year-olds I've sat there listening to how strong they used to be because they listened to their stupid coach telling them to go harder? And when I work with actors, I'm standing there with these, you know, young actors standing there going, you're a 22-year-old millionaire. I am not here to motivate you. I'm here to teach you how to stop and listen. And they're like, I never thought about that. I'm like, I know, because our egos as trainers, we keep wanting, we're feeding our egos. It's selfish. Look how hard I push this guy. Oh, it's easy to make you feel the burn. Just keep doing it until you complain. That's no problem. Yeah. No problem. I can make you feel the burn like that. Make you puke in 20 minutes. Like that used to be the joke when I was out here. Like these capoeira mestres, they used to always say, go to Matt, he'll make you puke. I don't care about making you puke. I care about you being that old guy. Like, I learned this stuff from like old people that could run circles around us. And they'd always tell us, they'd be like, oh, no. You're going to be strong when you're older. You want to be strong when you're older. You want to be capable when you're older. So that's what Total BS is all about. Because I'm watching people perform on a level that is so irresponsible. I mean, I'm blown away. I'll never achieve that goal. But the deal is, you know, it's like being able to go and work with, you know, guys from the Jackie Chan team when you're in your 40s is pretty fucking cool. And you don't get there by going hard. You just don't.
Right. You have to take it over time. And I mean, one of my heroes, Leonardo da Vinci, he was able to bend iron bars when he was young, but he was also in impeccable shape all his life. He wanted to be able to move. It's amazing how people with that intelligence realize it's not about what you do when you're young or how awesome you were. It's about what you can do throughout your life. I train people who are older who aren't able to move as well, and being able to get them back on that track is hard. So you want to do it while you're young.
You know, when I talk about this stuff, you know, it's like, because I know some amazing coaches, and it's funny because, like, I always say the people that get offended by the way that I talk are the people that are doing it. because I have a lot of other coaches and they're just like, boom, high-fiving me over, and because I've learned from these amazing coaches that care deeply about their people, right? I've learned from coaches that they're just impeccable shape, they're impeccable people. And so it's not all collegiate sports, right? But we do have to manage the attitude of our athletes, because you can watch that hyper focus. Like when you're in that ring, this is all that matters, right? And so sometimes it's what is your personal practice? Because a lot of people are training and we're learning from people. Like I watch a lot of people and they're like taking fitness advice from these special forces guys. And I'm like, do you have any idea that, first off, if you think you're going away to this workshop and you're going to become like a Navy SEAL, you're so delusional. You just need to you deserve to get your money taken. Right. But the next thing is you have to understand, like, most of that special forces training is like the most important piece of it is decision-making and emotional intelligence, because there's real consequences to what they do. So if we're just going there to be all tough, like, you're missing the point. Like,
well, there's a lot of the Navy SEAL training people who go in there. It's not the ones who are tough or smart that survive. It's the ones that are not survive, but stay in. It's the ones that are actually capable and actually pick up the person next to them.
It's emotional intelligence and decision making. Like, you have to be able to make decisions under tremendous stress. And it's like, I mean, as a person that has no desire to do any of that, and then also it's like the way Total BS kind of came around was, I just want to share this work, because so many times people have asked, like, what do you do when this hurts, or what do you do? Like, I only know these 5 things. Now I'm stuck at home, and I'm like, well, here, learn how to turn that into your whole thing. Like, I have the 32-piece Qigong flight. And really what that is it's me. I went around to so many different systems and I realized they're all doing the same exercises. So maybe today you want to work out, tomorrow you want to stretch, and then the next day you want to get all centered. And some days you're gonna do them all, but maybe it's cold outside, so you start very slow, and then by the end of it you're like gunning. It's like you can start anywhere. So that's kind of what Total BS is. And
it's about that balance.
Yeah, and the hard part to talk to people about it is, when I say, here's this course, they literally think it's like going to be a video, but no, it's like 50 videos, and they trickle out to you over like, a week, 2 weeks, and I don't think people realize that. My buddy Daniel, he was talking about, he's like, I don't think people realize how much you work.
Yeah. Well, that's why when I asked the question earlier about the courses, I was like, there's a massive collection here, because it's like a Netflix essentially.
And it's growing constantly. I'm putting out a lot of stuff. I'm just trying not to overwhelm people, because people don't realize, like, I have this whole place is wired up. I can go anywhere in this building and make something happen. And I'm also teaching people how to do a lot of this stuff, because they need that. That's a new skill that we have to have now. It's like the new reality, It's like, got to be on these boxes.
So, right. Where can people find you online?
Total BS Wellness.
And is there any particular social accounts that you do care for?
Yeah, the Instagram at Total BS Wellness, and you can even YouTube me at Total BS. So, like, my YouTube is open source stuff. So things that I've noticed that they're everywhere, I will put up my version of that. And then yes, it will drive you. If you want more, then you go to Total BS, and then we'll get you super deep. And then with all the courses, I can either walk tandem with you through it for a price, right? Or you can just buy the course, or you can actually subscribe. And that's what I do. And I'm sick of telling people what's on the back end. So I just said 2 weeks free, knock it out. Because someone's like, aren't you worried about them stealing? I'm like, if you think you're going to get good at all of this stuff in the next 20 years, you're so delusional. Have fun. Yeah, have fun.
Right. Well, and it's still like with 50 videos too, you can't really take that. What would be a call to action for the audience today?
Go on Total BS, and I would suggest the freemium is amazing. For example, there's a talk on there about prepping for disaster. And after that talk, that guy, he's now with FEMA. You know what I mean? He was like with the county, and now he's with FEMA. And then those storyteller people that, putting together presentations, I'm helping them with their next course, their next master course. These guys, they've done TED Talks that have shown to millions of people. These are some of the top-notch people you're ever going to learn from, and it's free. Just conversations like this.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, you have a lot of freemium content
Tons.
too on there too. You've been very generous, and it's amazing. I've looked at just a few different things before the episode too, and it's like it's insane how much you have on there.
This is what happens when you don't have. I don't have Netflix.
Yeah. I can't stand Netflix sometimes, but all right. And then beyond a call to action, what could be a call to growth for the audience to do?
Seek. Just know that it's not about getting more, and especially now, like if you were to go. Listen to, we just did the Year of the Rat talk, we're in Year of the Rat, Month of the Rat, but we're in winter now. And the act of focusing on the little trivial things that make a beautiful life, right? Like I think is very, very, very important. So I do the situational mindfulness course, and there's a moment in there where I just say, take roll. So and this is a meditation I've done since I was about 5 or 6 years old. And it's, look at your hands and your feet and just take roll. Look at everything in your room. Like there's a picture there and a microphone here, a computer, and just take roll and know all that, appreciate it again, and know that it can be taken from you. Right. My dad would say my dad was a crazy Navy SEAL dude. You know what I mean? He was like this guy and he was pretty, he had these interesting little things, but everything can be taken from you. So ask yourself, do you really want it? And take a second and then seek deeper. You probably don't need, like, ask yourself, how can you do more with what you have, as opposed to like, it's the guitar player that's like, I would play rock and roll, but my guitar, I need a blue guitar, or now I need this guitar. It's like, no, you don't. Like,
you see one that can work.
Yeah. New shoes don't make you faster. Your yoga pants don't make you more flexible. Like none of that. If you're not, like, learn to show up, know that like creativity is born from a lack of resources, not from an abundant, it's like that's the whole thing. Like, yeah, you want to be able to be creative, like to think outside the box, trap yourself in a box with nothing for a second and like figure out how to be creative with what you already have. And that's something that I think is very, very, very important. There are exceptions. Like in order to play saxophone, you might need a saxophone, right? And you want one that works, that's right. But after that, just
it's all about creativity. Well, once again, this is Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator, and Matt Lucas on the Polymaths Podcast. Thank you for joining.
Everyone, you guys got to give Dustin a round of applause, because this is the most organized, and out of all the people that I've met, I've been like, man, I get my shit together, man. Dustin's coming for me.
Coming after you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to have met you, though, because that's a great way to work together in the future.
Yeah, and let's stay in touch, too, because I want to get some more ideas for all this automation, and I got to pick your brain. This is, okay, seeking, us old people, we need to seek you people out. Like, you guys seek us to where we'll teach you stupid things, but we're going to seek you out because you guys are going to teach us about the new bands and what are these new, like, we are balanced, elders and young people. Mm-hmm. Like, it's no longer we use you to program our VCRs. We're using you to help build our lives. So you are like, me meeting you has like opened up a huge, like, thank you for all the wisdom. Thank you, man. Yeah.
Thank you.